To see what this is talking about. It says that the purge at the FBI could lead to the next 9/11.
Now that we are over 2 weeks into the second Trump term, the Wall Street Journal reporting that the administration, the CIA, has just offered buyouts to the entire workforce at the CIA. What the reporting says is that employees were offered 8 months of pay and benefits if they leave the intelligence agency, part of Trump's efforts to downsize the government, even the CIA, and put more people in these positions who are closely aligned with his view. I'm joined tonight by the veteran journalist Garrett Graff. Garrett, on this, what do you make of this? What was your initial reaction to this report from the Wall Street Journal?
I mean, it is as shocking as any other development that we are living through right now. You know, one of the things I think is one of the only truths that we have in the Trump era is the inconsistency of the logical consistency of one announcement to another. For a lot of reasons, you could imagine that on the same night that you are announcing that the U.S. might take over Gaza, you would not want to gut the intelligence agencies that help us understand that part of the world and mitigate risks to the United States here and abroad, on the same day that you are also looking at neutering the FBI's entire counterterrorism program here at the homeland. That for instance, some of these decisions in one category might have downside risks in another. Can I ask you about part of this? Because the CIA spokesperson said that this move was part of an effort to infuse the agency with renewed energy, as they put it. And they also said that Trump's CIA will have a greater focus on the Western Hemisphere, targeting countries not traditionally considered adversaries of the United States, saying, for example, they could use the CIA to use espionage to give Trump more leverage in his trade negotiations, potentially spying on Mexico's government amid the ongoing spat. I think
this sounds real interesting. It was like, all right, we're going, like the dude was saying, he's like, all right, we're going to take over a part of the world that's on the other side of the world, but we're also going to downsize our intelligence, which is helping us know what to do on that side of the world. And then taking the FBI's intelligence to spy on trade conditions when there are countries out there, I'm pretty sure, who would love to detonate something on us. Interesting appropriation.
Quotes like that show how little any of the people involved in this actually understand the mission of any of these federal agencies. That the CIA and other intelligence agencies within the United States, like the part and parcel, the opening ante of what they do is help inform the president's negotiations with foreign leaders. I mean, this goes all the way back to, you know, the Snowden revelations, where we were monitoring Angela Merkel's cell phone. Like this is some of the most basic work that the CIA is already doing, and I can tell you because I have spoken to former officers who are involved in this. But like that's exactly the type of work that the CIA is already doing,
which Trump knows about because he brought up the Merkel surveillance to her face at a press conference in his first term. I remember it in the East Room where he was today. What happens if everyone at the CIA takes this buyout? Because we heard today, I think it was 20,000 people in the federal workforce had already taken these offers of buyouts. If the entire CIA, let's just say, for example, if they did, what does that look like tomorrow?
I mean, nothing good for the United States, and that's true, you know, at any one of these agencies. These workplaces, I think, I think part of the challenge of this is understanding that the goal here is just the chaos and the wreckage. That I don't think that there is any grand plan beyond these buyouts. You know, it's certainly not a cost-cutting measure to throw away decades of experience and millions of dollars in training that we have invested in these workforces. But you know, any one of these federal agencies is like any other workplace. There's a very small number of people on whom sort of the whole operation lies. I mean, the people who know the institutional history, the people who understand how the systems and the operations work. And when those people leave, the whole thing seizes up.
Yeah, and we're already just talking in the last segment about FBI workers who are suing the government because they feel like they're being unfairly targeted and about to have a mass purge. Cash Patel, as we're watching, basically everyone Trump is lined up on Capitol Hill get confirmed, despite initially thinking maybe they all wouldn't. What does that look like, do you think, when Cash Patel takes over the FBI?
I think the challenge is, I've covered the FBI for almost 20 years at this point. The FBI that I have covered my entire reporting career, the FBI that has existed since the day that J. Edgar Hoover died in May 1972, is already over. That institution is already dead. And we are arguing right now over the wreckage of what it might be when it is rebuilt at some point in the future. And I think that this is...
but what does it look like for the next 4 years? I mean, they very clearly have plans that are being... You know, if you don't like Trump and you're watching this is not the chaos of round one in these initial weeks. Like, we're just in the third week now, 2 weeks in. They're well executed, and they are carrying out exactly what they said they were going to do. So what does that actually look like, do you think?
Let me give you two very specific examples. It looks like 9/11, and it looks like corruption. It looks like 9/11 because the FBI that is being neutered right now, particularly the agents working on domestic terror and foreign terror involved in these January 6th prosecutions, are exactly the people tasked day in, day out with preventing the next 9/11.
That's a remarkable analysis to see what that could look like. Garrett Graff, obviously, we'll stay in touch with you on this as we do see what that looks like as it takes shape.
Whether it's counterterrorism, great power competition, you name it, from head to toe, those two organizations are what protect America, along with the Department of Defense. Eroding the workforce or really getting after the morale and really empowerment of the workforce is going to have a direct impact on national security at every level.
So, Mark Preston, I think that there is some willingness from American voters to take a look at the federal government generally and say, hey, like, perhaps we can do more with less. Perhaps we're spending too much. The bureaucracy is bloated. But I'm thinking about, like, the Moscow station chief of the CIA getting an email saying you can take a buyout. I mean, it seems like this is considerably different than some of those other potential options. I mean, what is the impact?
Yeah, because it's different because that Moscow bureau chief has probably been in the service for 25 years and has probably spent most of his or her life overseas, probably in Russia or in the vicinity, so has that capabilities. You know, it's interesting that you bring this up. I remember a few years back where there was concern that the United States had lost the ability now to understand what was going on in what was the Eastern Bloc, which is now Russia and what have you, because the focus had been done so much on terrorism that there hadn't been enough boots on the ground and a focus on what was happening in Russia and what was happening in China. Now you're talking about even further depleting the force that we have currently out there. We should be out there trying to get people to come into the CIA, to get people to come into the FBI, especially at this time.
Yeah, it just makes us less safe, bottom line. I mean, I think that's, for a lot of Americans, they're probably seeing these headlines and saying, oh, well, good, he's going in there and shaking things up. But I do think we have to bring it back to, but it makes you less safe. And God forbid, some of our, people at the CIA with the experience, the expertise, the insight, like think about if the folks at the NTSB would have taken the buyout the week before the crash that we just had in D.C., who would have been doing the investigation? I mean,
and let's think for a second. Yeah, no, sorry, finish.
Just one last thing. The other point I would make, too, is some of those individuals from time to time, you will find them in USAID projects. That's the other reason why getting rid of you. If you've ever watched a spy show, and having been on many of those trips where I was told, just they're coming with us to this site. Okay, fine, there they are. So point being, it makes us less safe. It's stupid. There's one way to do this that would have been smart, that probably would have also saved us money, but kept us safe and not created so much chaos and pain. But the chaos and the pain is part of the point.
Well, and when you think about, and anyone who has watched a spy show, if you understand anything about how it works, Elliot, is that it is a question of building relationships, right? So if you are a CIA operation, if you're a director of operations,
the best spies know everybody.
Not paramilitary necessarily, but someone whose job it is to have cover at USAID or at the State Department, you are building relationships with assets in the country that you are then using to get information to protect Americans at home from things like another 9/11, right? And somebody taking that buyout does material damage in that suddenly it's not just the expertise and the things in their head, it's the little the relationships that they have to gather information.
Absolutely, and having not just watched spy shows, but worked very closely with the FBI, which is a counter-terror organization. People are getting wrapped up in this idea of woke stuff at Donald Trump's house. No, the FBI is the only law enforcement entity that is both a counter-terror and a law enforcement body, right? And these are folks that are spending their careers across presidential administrations, building these relationships overseas to keep Americans safe. When you begin trying to root out this perceived political bias, you're not just making Americans safe, you're actually jeopardizing the free speech rights of those people that work there. You are punishing them for this perceived bias that doesn't exist. It's an overwhelmingly right-leaning workforce. Like, and I know this having worked there. So this idea, these things all sound great on bumper stickers and talking points, but they're just not real and are going to make Americans less safe.
And I do wonder, too, with something like the CIA, there are plenty of other departments in the government where if you ask people, do we have too many people working there, people might say, yes, that can be right-sized or whatever corporate layoff speak we want to use. But I think for something like the CIA, if you're going to let go a lot of people, you need to have a clear plan for how you're going to recruit new people in to build those relationships. You've seen Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense making a big deal over the last 48 hours about, look, here's our new ad campaign to recruit people to the Army. We're going to get people in. Haven't necessarily heard anything like that about, say, the FBI, the CIA. And I think that's where you start going, well, wait a minute, is the plan just to eliminate these people or is it to replace them with a new crop? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah, really quick. No, just to get the background checks for people, to get them up to speed to be able to do the job. Number one, find people who you can get the requisite clearances to be able to handle this type of sensitive work and get them hired and get them screened can be months. And so the idea that you're just going to start firing people and bringing some set of folks on is incredibly difficult, and people don't really have that in their heads.
Number one.
So they're worried about having qualified people over at the FBI to make sure that all the programs still keep running with people getting laid off. We shall see.